Art was deadly. Here's the truth they never told you.
An artist opens a box of paints, and it's not just a palette. It's a small medicine cabinet of poisons. The studio is quiet. You can hear the brush scratching across the canvas and the sound of a knife scraping dry pigment from a mortar. On the table lie powders of every shade, a heavy green, a bright yellow, a deep red. They look like pure beauty, but many of them used to be more dangerous than weapons. And the scariest part is that artists often weren't taking risks for art. They were simply working the way everyone worked. Why paints were deadly? Before modern chemistry and safety standards, color came from whatever people could get: minerals, metals, earth, plants. Pigments were crushed into powder and mixed with oils, egg, or glue, turning them into paint. But the problem was that the perfect colors often came from toxic substances. White was one of the most treacherous. Bright, dense, and incredibly opaque, it was prized because it made skin tones look alive and highlights look real. But traditionally, that kind of white was often made from lead compounds. Lead doesn't smell like poison and doesn't look like poison. It simply accumulates in the body. First comes fatigue, headaches, irritability, then stomach pain, trembling hands, weakness, memory problems. And the worst part for an artist, your hands stop being precise. Yellow could also hide a dirty secret. Especially the brightest, most durable yellows were historically made from mineral compounds that could contain dangerous elements. That pigment easily got onto skin, under nails, and into the mouth, and studios didn't have the habit of constant hand washing or proper ventilation. Green was its own story. At one point in Europe, especially rich greens became fashionable, bright and alive, like sunlit leaves. And those greens are often linked to chemical formulas based on arsenic. Arsenic isn't the kind of poison where you just drop dead. It brings weakness, nausea, skin problems, chronic illness. And the pigment was everywhere, in the dust, on the table, on clothing. The artist was literally living inside it. And then there were reds. To get a deep red, people used all kinds of sources, from minerals to insects. Not every red was deadly, but the danger often came not only from the ingredients, but from the process: dust, grinding, heating, and the solvents added to mixtures. How the poison got into the body? The main problem was pigment dust. When an artist ground dry powder, a cloud rose into the air. He breathed it in for years. Dust settled on lips and fingers and fell into food. The second issue was studio habits. Many artists worked for hours without noticing their hands were covered in paint, and some did something that seems shocking today. They shaped the brush tip with their lips to get a fine point. It was a simple craft life hack, and it was also a direct path for toxins into the body. The third were solvents and varnishes. Even when a pigment itself wasn't deadly, the fumes from the materials used to thin paint and seal surfaces could cause dizziness and chronic irritation of the lungs. In a tight room with no ventilation, it became slow poisoning. Why they kept doing it? Because color was power. In an era when paints were expensive, a rich, saturated pigment was a sign of skill and status. Clients wanted brighter, richer, like the masters, and an artist who couldn't deliver the right tone lost commissions. And many symptoms were vague. Tired? You work too much. Stomach hurts? Bad food. Hands shaking? Nerves. People rarely connected it to the beautiful colors on the palette. Did they have any protection? Sometimes, yes, but it was primitive. Some tried grinding pigments wet to keep dust down. Some kept windows open when they could. Some had apprentices prepare paints, another dark side of the craft. The risk was often pushed onto the youngest. Painting only became truly safer much later, when manufacturing standards, toxicity labeling, and the habit of protecting yourself became normal. We look at old paintings and see light, skin, shimmering fabric, but we rarely think that someone paid for that light with their health. Beauty in history was often made from things that weren't beautiful at all. Metal dust, poisonous minerals, workshops where breathing color was literal. So, next time you see an especially vivid green or a dense white in an old painting, remember, sometimes it wasn't just color. It was the slow price of the craft.